other political makers have recourse to cut-cutting techniques. This can be similar to Africa, since we have leaders that are more powerful, more manipulative of other people, and especially the judges. According to Heron and Randazzo, it is possible for an independent judiciary to be restrained and manipulated by the political elites as a tool for legitimizing illegal actions. My first hypothesis is the greater the number of effective political parties, the greater the degree of judicial independence. And this was from Smithy and Ishiyama's 1999 paper. My second was the greater the level of civil conflict in the past, the greater the degree of judicial independence. And the greater the level of ethnic fractionalization, the greater the degree of judicial independence. I looked at ethnic fractionalization because I come from a country where we're 250 ethnic groups, a country like Democratic Republic of Congo that has over 200 ethnic groups, and most African countries actually have over 100 ethnic groups. Is this a determinant factor for the level of judicial independence? My measures for judicial independence, I use the Bertelsmann's Transformation Index. One thing I like to talk about, however, is strength and independence. There are two different things in the judiciary. Judicial independence is defined as the judiciary free both from unconstitutional intervention by other institutions and from corruption. This may mean that the judiciary is not affiliated with political parties or ethnic groups, because some African countries actually have ethnic political parties where they want their leaders to come from a certain ethnic group, they want their leaders to come from an organization, and stuff like that. And this definition is from Smithy and Ishiyama's paper. I looked at the average number of effective parties, the level of conflict intensity in the 1990s. I also used Bertelsmann's transformation for that. The ethnic fractionalization index, which was for the number of ethnicities in the countries. 4 ranks. I used 4 ranks because nowadays we're talking about crude oil as a major mineral resource for most countries. And so I decided to look, is this actually a determinant factor for how the judiciary is in the country? Are the judiciaries more independent when they have a lot of oil and leaders fighting and stuff like that? Level of corruption. Of course, when a country has so much mineral resources, there's a tendency to have conflict over mineral resources among the leaders, especially my country, Nigeria. A lot of the leaders actually dispute over oil and all that. Natural log of gross national income, the money and all that acquired from the natural resources. This is actually Smithy and Ishiyama's results for the rest of the world. As the number of effective parties increases, the level of judicial independence actually increases. And as you can see, the start of there, right there, reflects that this is statistically significant. The level of civil conflict, however, is not a determinant factor. Ethnic fractionalization index was in agreement, but it's not statistically significant for this particular research. I also looked at the 4 ranks, the level of corruption, and natural log of the average. What I would like you to note in this is that as the number of effective political parties in a government increases, you also want your judiciary to be more independent, because you want an impartial, neutral judge to be able to settle disputes, write new constitutions, and just, this is my result for Africa. The good thing about it is it's similar to Smithy and Ishiyama's. As the number of effective political parties increases, the level of judicial independence is supposed to increase. and also like Smithy and Ishiyama, the level of civil conflict, ethnic fractionalization, poor rent, and level of corruption were not statistically significant in this research. So that's the question: is Africa different? Are the countries in Africa different from the rest of the world? No, they're not. The results for both the world and Africa support Smithy and Ishiyama's argument that the number of political parties is strongly related to the emergence of judicial independence. The results are also consistent for the African cases. All right, thank you.
I will start from your hypothesis, maybe from your conclusion. I want to say this is one thing people still shy away to tell the open world. The judiciary has, in anywhere in the world, the judiciary has the upper arm, and they wield that power in any part of the world. But in Africa, especially where I come from, Nigeria, that's my daughter, I will tell you that the judiciary still, they are afraid of the black magic, juju, voodoo, because they have this power they use on people, the judiciary. They are the all in all in whatever form that is. The court rise and shine. But I must tell you something, the black power is still there. And the judiciary is afraid of them. Because it still works. The black juju man will come to court with his bags of magic or voodoo or whatever you call it. And I'll tell you, 70% it works. If you are a judge and you do not do what is right or proclaim what is right, you are in for it. People are still afraid of that.
Well, this is exactly right. And I think this is consistent with what Old is saying, is that, in countries where you have a dominant party, right, courts are not independent. There's no interest for dominant parties to have independent courts because it checks what they can do. Whereas if you have a bunch of little parties competing with one another, they're afraid of the other party dominating them, so they want an independent judge. So they'd rather have an independent. So that Nigeria is a good case of where you have dominant party politics, essentially reducing the level of independent judiciaries, whereas competitive party politics actually raises it. And I think, Africa in general, is not different than patterns in the rest of the world, which is actually absolutely remarkable because no one studies African judiciaries. They don't.
They don't.
So, Dr. Ishiyama, should we include Juju in one of
I think in Egypt and Latin America, they do the same thing, too, is that when you have the big man in power, they use juju. They use persuasion, and they say it can be black magic, and they use it if they need to. Where essentially the party says, well, they've been inspired by both juju and by God. And so that they circumvent the acts of the judiciary. Now, the one example, I mean, this is all on average, but the one case where it's kind of unique is Zimbabwe. In Zimbabwe, you have Mugabe, who does whatever he wants, but then the judiciary has been relatively independent. This is the one case where they've been at odds, that you've had an authoritarian regime that has at least tolerated to some extent an independent judiciary. But that's only one case. The rest are pretty consistent with Nigeria.
It's not Nigeria alone, it's everywhere in the world.
No, I mean, like I said, like the general pattern is consistent with Nigeria. Meaning the world is consistent with Nigeria.
We are trying to...
Which is Olu's findings, which I think are pretty important.
You're right.
All right, thank you.